Welcome to Coffee with a Curator. I'm here today with Dr. Kathryn Ko. We are brought to you by the Patchogue Arts Council and the Pat Med Public Library. We meet once a week for the month of July. We'll be here at 7. I should say we meet every other week because it alternates with another program that we do. So um, so once every other week, we'll be doing Coffee with the Curator. Today, we're here with Dr. Kathryn Ko. I had the pleasure of meeting her, I don't know how many years ago. She managed to show up at one of the summer member shows, and I was introduced to her there. And we've become quite friendly, and she is full of surprises, and I'm always learning something new about Dr. Kathryn Ko. So Dr. Ko is a neurosurgeon and a an original resident of Hawaii, and she's come to us all the way from Hawaii. So tell us how you managed to do that from Hawaii to New York and from youth to medicine.
But
Fill us in a little bit.
it was a long plane ride.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. About 10 hours. But I had in medical school at the University of Hawaii. I was in neuroanatomy, and that was my second year or first year, and I fell in love with the brain. And I had originally thought I was going into OBGYN, but then I started to do brain dissections, and that was it. And so they did not have a residency in neurosurgery in Hawaii. They have a number of other residencies, but not neurosurgery. Neurosurgery is a pretty select residency. There's not that many. And so I had to make the leap over from Honolulu to Brooklyn. And I had never been east of LA. And so when I was about 26, I got on a plane with about 5 cardboard boxes filled with books and a few flip-flops, and came to Brooklyn. And then from
Fit
there,
right in with the flip-flops in Brooklyn.
way before everybody else was wearing flip-flops, by the way. That's a Hawaii thing. And so then I managed to get into Mount Sinai for neurosurgery residency training. And that neurosurgery took about 6 years after medical school. So 4 years undergraduate, 4 years medical school, 6 years of residency, and 2 years of fellowship. And so by the time I was ready to, go out on my own and practice neurosurgery, I had been in school for a decade, almost over a decade.
Yes, and that started when you first got here from Hawaii to New York.
That started, the whole process started when I got to New York. It was about 8 years before I got out of training, and then started practicing in New York City. At one point, probably still holds true, I'm the longest practicing woman neurosurgeon in New York City history. And so I put that on Instagram one day, and somebody wrote back to me and said, "Oh, I didn't know you were the oldest."
Longest practicing building.
I'm like, you know what? There may be one more older, but yeah. So longest practicing. It sounds better. Yeah.
We're not quite sure how old you are, and we're not going to explore that right now. However,
Right.
I'd like to share with everybody that Dr. Ko has an alter ego called Ambidexter. Can you tell us what that's all about?
Well, actually on Instagram, it's Doc Ambidexter.
Okay.
And that, because I think Ambidexter was taken, so I had to mutate it a little bit. But during medical school, I had trouble staying awake because I move a lot, and so during the lectures I couldn't stay up, and so I had to figure out how to get myself really aware and alert. And so I decided to switch to the left hand. And so I started taking notes with the left hand. And it took a long time, but after a decade, I became ambidextrous. And so that took me into neurosurgery residency and all kinds of other areas. I actually, draw, paint, write, and operate with both hands now. But it took a long time to get there. It started on a whim. I always say that if I went to my left hand to stay awake, when I became ambidextrous, I got woke, because it really did open up a lot of neurological channels that didn't. I don't think for one thing I'd be an artist today if I hadn't switched to my left hand.
Well, that's interesting. There's one other famous ambidextrous person who is both an artist and a scientist. Do you ever hear of a guy named Leonardo?
Yeah, yeah. He was. I think he was primarily left-handed. I am born right-handed, and so I voluntarily switched to left.
I guess,
I think, yeah. People who are left-handed, to some degree or other, are ambidextrous, because the world favors right-handedness, the doorknob,
right.
The keys, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really go through life just using your right hand. But people who are left-handed have a broader experience with using both hands. And I think I think that's what made the biggest difference in my life. And it was the hardest thing to do. It was harder than becoming a brain surgeon, was to switch to the left hand.
Yeah, I'd see that. I'd see that.
And you're right-handed yourself, right?
Me, yes.
Yeah.
And when in my youth, I had broken my right hand. So for a while, I practiced doing things with my left hand. But once my hand healed, I was right back on the right side.
Well, it's funny because people who do, woodworking and to some extent that type of form building that you do are ambidextrous to a certain extent too, because of the tools.
Well, I'm finding that when I'm working, that I definitely have a right hand bias, and the markings I make always tend to be, if I'm doing this spiraling thing, it always seems to be in a clockwise fashion, I think, because it's the way I hold the tools. Do you know you know Betsy Smith, right? The wife of Richard Smith, who used to be an artist that we showed, famous artist.
Right.
Betsy would always say, you can always tell a Dick Smith because he's lefty, and his strokes are all left-handed. And I never even really looked at that before until I started looking closely at his works, and it's almost like, yes, everything is the counter to the way marks I would have made. Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, you can tell from when people draw, if they're drawing with their right hand or their left hand, by basically the way the etching goes, the strokes. Same thing. Yeah.
So, Dr. Kathryn Ko is a very talented draftsperson. I guess it's that skill that comes from having that tight motor control that you develop doing neurosurgery, that you put into making your drawings. So we have some of your drawings here too. We'll look at some of them. Can you see my screen now? It seemed to have blacked out on mine. Is anybody seeing my screen right now?
I can't see it. It's black.
It's black now. Okay, so
Yeah.
I have to bring it somehow or other. There it goes. I have to just remember to bring it back. Okay. When people come in, it seems to override my image here. Well, we have an image here, right? And it's one of Dr. Ko's. What's the medium you've used on this?
Acrylic.
Okay, so you've worked in a number of different mediums, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
when I was in school, when I was in school, I think I was for the master's program in representational painting. I was one of the few that favored acrylic. Everybody else was painting in oil, and so I favor acrylic during school because it was faster, and I didn't have that much time, so it dried faster. You could get the painting done faster. And I actually like acrylic, except for the fact that the colors shift when it dries. when the water evaporates out of the pigment, acrylic
Yes.
pigment, the color does change. Oil maintains its color, but
Mm.
it's a different, it takes a lot longer to work it. But anyway, yeah, this is basically a self-portrait.
Well, it's I can see it says K2O in there. So are you operating on yourself? Is that it?
No, that's my hand.
Yes, you're
That's
right.
actually my hand, and that is a this is a very rare case of a tumor of the nerve that runs down the back of the leg, the sciatic nerve. And that is a benign tumor, but it was very large. It was about the size of a apricot, and total removal. And the red
We have to wait for Dr. Ko to come back to us. She seems to have frozen.
cord there is actually around kind of the
So, Dr. Ko, you're freezing on us. Could you? You seem to be back now. Could you repeat what you said?
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is a self-portrait. That's my hand.
We got that. Yeah.
Okay, and
We're up to talking about the tumor.
okay, yeah. So this is a benign tumor called a neurofibroma, and this was a benign version, and it was attached to one of the nerves that go from the spine to the foot. Important nerve, sciatic nerve, and this was actually this was just above the knee. So this patient is face down, and that is the thigh there. And the red cord is around the nerve. So I'm isolating the nerve from the tumor. And I have gauze in my hand, so I'm sort of covering the tumor there. And it was a total removal on this case. And so, so what I do in these things, I keep the integrity of the medical information intact, so that if a neurosurgeon was looking at it, they'd say, yeah, there's a Wheatlander retractors, they'd go blah, 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 technical stuff.
Okay.
But I also try to infuse it with something that is so that.
Well, you're frozen again.
Okay. Yeah, it's an intermittent. Hopefully, okay, it's unstable. 1 second.
So
Okay,
you
I'm
were
back.
saying you try to
Yeah.
infuse it with, I'm assuming some kind of aesthetic choices?
I try to infuse the paintings with poetry. I put poetry into the painting so that if you don't understand the anatomy or what I'm doing, then you'll get something out of it just by the way that purple cord twirls and goes down. And so it's sort of based on the corners. Each tool is sort of the hands going to the left corner, the twirls, purple cord is going down right, the retractor, the Wheatlander retractors are going off to one side, and the dead center is that wound. And so there's a bunch of aesthetic choices that I made based on this. Now, when you talk about the operating room, if I freeze, put your hand up, okay?
Okay.
So I'll know. Just go like that. But there's in the operating room, the lighting is chaotic. You have fluorescent on the ceiling. You have halogen over the operating field. You have xenon on the microscope, and the headlamps are LEDs. And so the wavelength in the OR is really, really chaotic. And so when you paint or you create a piece of art that is meaningful from an operating room setting, you really have to edit. And you have to decide in your mind where the light is going to come and where it's going to hit. Because if you just simply took a picture and painted it, it would be meaningless. It would be flat. It would have no emotion or passion with it. So that's why I sort of have an idea, a concept, and something I want to do, and I change the lighting. I even change the colors.
So let's backtrack just a little bit, and why don't you tell me how you decided that you would have this second career simultaneously?
Well, you know, I started out as a writer, and medicine lends itself to narrative because you know we interview the patient, we write the chief complaint, the history of the illness, and you know, so writing is a natural segue from medicine. And I wrote from very young, like about age 5. I won a poetry competition, and then it sort of wasn't enough. Words weren't enough for me. I needed to do something visual. There was something missing in my career. And art gave me something that I didn't even know I needed. And when I finally came to it, which was sort of stumbling, because I had no idea I was going to go into visual art, no idea at all until late 40s, even later, late 40s. And then it sort of kind of closed that circle in medicine. It allowed me to, you know, bring medicine a little bit more forefront into a more humane. It infused a lot of humanity in medicine for me, and it allowed me to, you know, the paintings I think have a broad audience besides those in medicine, and that's very been very fulfilling part of it.
So you have up this, I'm going to bring up another picture that you have here. I think I can. There you go. This is based on a famous artwork.
Yeah, this is the Gross Clinic. I didn't paint the background,
Nope.
just the woman on front. And this is Gross Clinic by Thomas Eakins. And I was the inaugural artist in residence for the American Medical Women's Association. We started a program, and I was the first one. After me, there were many brilliant, way brilliant dancers, sculptor, way brilliant than anything I can put out. But I was the first one, and this piece is a woman with a mighty torch. It's basically based on the Statue of Liberty. There's a inscription around the pedestal by Emma Lazarus, a woman poet. And in this painting by Thomas Eakins, there's only one woman in it. And so the history of medical art is bereft of any positive female influences. And that not only goes for Thomas Eakins, it also goes for Rembrandt and some of the other very important masterful works. And so my project was to study medical art and to then draw a line in the sand and say, okay, it stops right here. And this piece, The Woman with the Mighty Torch, was sort of a turning point where now women are more forefront in medicine. We're 50%. And so it was an important thing. When they did represent women in medical art, historically, it was always, as you can see, the woman in the left lower corner, she's, you know, scared, or it was the corpse, or it was the patient being examined in an inappropriate manner. And so one of the important passions I have is bringing medical art into making it contemporary with the social tastes of the time.
Well, that's interesting, you know, that in the narrative of this, the woman is the patient's mother, I believe. And right. And Thomas Eakins is actually in here himself. He might be cut off. He might be on the right in the gallery over
right.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did put himself in. It's a masterpiece painting. You know, it's just not contemporary.
No, it's of its time. It was really a famous work.
Mm-hmm.
So, since you're talking about, like, you know, people, you know, and like this human touch, there's this work that Kathryn had shown in. She actually submitted it as a piece to our member exhibition, which this year's will be coming soon. But let me see if I can find that for us now. Let me see if, oh, here it is. Comes right there. This is, I believe, the first piece I ever saw of yours, and it had such a fascinating story about it. You know, it's like a, you know, it's just a compelling image, and then the story was like, wow, it was really powerful. So would you like to share that with us?
This one here, this was done during art school. I did it during, I think almost my last year in art school. And this skull belongs to someone who was found in a garbage bag in the Bronx, and he was deceased. And so the medical examiner in New York City called me and asked me to come by and look at the skull to see if I could help them figure out who he was and what had happened to them. And so the minute I saw, because, when they did the autopsy on the corpse, they found that he had had brain surgery. And so they were trying to tie together this mystery. He was basically an unknown. And so I ended up painting him, but it's a scientific statement. It's a medical statement, and it's art because there's a color shift, and you can see the colors that I chose. That is not the background the skull was positioned on. But from a medical standpoint, he has had some kind of operation that extends across the forehead above the orbits, and that is called a Bi-Frontal Craniotomy. It's not a very common operation, but it's not rare either. I've done a number of them. He also has, if you could see those little micro plates and screws, that's what we use to reaffix the skull back to the cranium. When the bone flap, it's called the bone flap back to the cranium when we've done brain surgery. And so we hypothesized, because I published this in an article called "A Neurosurgeon Could Save Your Life Tonight," because a neurosurgeon did save his life. And if that neurosurgeon would somehow be identified, we could probably figure out who this person is. He also has some orbital fractures. And if you look down into the nasal cavity of that skull, you'll see that the midline is bent toward the right. And so he's probably had nasal trauma also. Now, what's interesting, in art, there's and each artist has a signature stroke. We were talking about that, basically 1 or 2 strokes of colors on the canvas, and what the artist is, who the artist is. There's a surgical signature. And I remember when I had this, I did a art on call episode on this, and I had three or four surgeons, and each one of them said, no, that's not my work. Because we all have a surgical signature that we do things a certain way. And so my hypothesis was that if I had enough exposure of this skull, that somebody would step forward and identify the person. It's a long operation. And so there would have been at least maybe 2 surgeons, maybe residents, maybe also a whole team. And so far I haven't been able to identify the person, but if you happen to Google "A Neurosurgeon Could Save Your Life," the article is online. And this is, there's a watch that I did below that, a Timex watch. Yeah, so after somehow I got, somebody heard that I was doing these these neurosurgical cold cases. And so a woman from Florida sent me some information on a female who was found in the lake, southern Florida lake. And she was wrapped in a boat tarp and had some other horrible things done to her. And she was an unknown. When they did the autopsy, they found out that she had had brain surgery. And so I actually, in that article, there's a photograph of her skull model. And this is the watch she was wearing when somebody threw her overboard. And it stopped at this exact time. And so I was very, very fast. I drew this from a very poor photograph. It was so bad. But there's something to be said about trying to identify people who have gone unknown. And so I'm hoping that sometime I can get some leads.
Well, this is a forensic episode in your life. Mostly, though, you're not dealing with people who have passed, but you are working with people who are survivors. Correct?
Right.
Yeah. Let me see what we have here.
But
Okay.
it's interesting to be able to use art to help a neurosurgical patient.
Okay. Well, I remember seeing a film about was that you shared with me? Was that a patient of yours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on it. Those videos are on YouTube, and it's called Neurosurgery the Freak. I actually work with a medical student collaborating. His handle is Med School Radio, and we do a lot of videos together on interesting thing. It combines science and art.
Okay. So, besides making paintings that directly um, go with her neurosurgery, Dr. Ko has made a series of other types of work, and if you were to go to her studio, you would just get lost in all of the different types of exciting things that she's done. But you have this one series here, right? You have a number of works from. Which one would you like to look at from?
Anyone.
The last one,
Yeah.
this one you just sent me.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, there was one of well, I guess before that we'll go to the ones that I had first seen of these, and they had to do with which ones of these? It was one of these three down over here with the river in it. Do you
I think
recall?
it's on the left side, the
It's
lower left. Yeah.
there's two with people in the river, right?
Oh, okay.
And then there's one more. Let's just look at all of them for a moment then.
Okay.
Okay, let's open that up. Right. So what is happening here?
Well, the so these are like discards.
I discard
These
you.
are, by the way, these are all oil. This is oil painting.
Mm-hmm.
But so these are discards, and so the idea is to take a painting from the, for example, the Salvation Army. That's $3 or something like that, and to create meaningful art out of it, so that canvas and that paint don't go out to the road. And so I will look at it and see if I can insert a contemporary theme in there. And this, I've done a number of them, but this one here, these have to do with water. And I became very interested in water because of the terrible migration, refugees across water. And also because Bruce Lee said, be water, my friend. And so I became very interested in that whole thing. And it led to, books, Death by Water, Kanzaburo O, T.S. Eliot, and others who wrote about the dangers of water, the beauty and the dangers of water.
What was the Color of Water? Is that the one that I just read? Does that sound familiar? The Color of Water.
Kanzaburo O wrote Death by Water.
No, that's not the one.
It comes directly from T.S. Eliot. He wrote Death by Water in the Wasteland, and it goes even back further to St. John Perez, who T.S. Eliot translated. It's a whole theme of the dangers of water, and escape is what the whole thing is about. And so these are just all hazmat guys turning their back on somebody. And let's see some more of them. I think the last one, oh yeah, that one. So that one is, it's hard to see now, but there is a duck somewhere in there.
A duck?
Yeah, there was a little, yeah, there's a little duck. If you,
Viaduct.
yeah, there's a plastic duck for this child. And but it's very, very tiny. That was very hard to paint, by the way, because it's very, very small.
Where is it?
It should, I can't find it right now.
Is it near the child?
No, it's in the narrow area of the water. But maybe this was, I can't find it. Maybe it's really tiny. The child is tiny. But this is, this has to do with the child who, died during the overseas
From Syria
escape. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's one down below that. And this is also somebody trying to walk across water, being accosted by rifles or high level military ammunition. And then if there's a very faint image in the sky, it's very hard to see, but that's, I don't know if you can see it in the sky. It's outline of Casper the Friendly Ghost.
We all see Casper.
Yeah. So the thing is, this is called Nothing But Blue Skies. Someone to watch over me, and so this is wishing this person a safe journey to the other side. There's one more water painting, but these are all from discarded canvases. And so what I'll do is I'll look at it. I'll change the color. I'll change a mountain. I'll change the light. I'll add a tree, take away a tree. I think in one of them there were coconut trees. It didn't go at all, and so I took them out. This one here is this one's called The Wound, and this this canvas, like I said, they're all discarded. So this canvas was ripped, and so I thought, how could I make something meaningful out of this ripped canvas? And so I decided to make that rip a wound, and then I painted that surgical needle. It's called a needle holder, but that's what we use during surgery to sew up an incision or a wound. We have the suture is attached to that, and you can see that curved part is a needle, and so the needle is technically sewing up that wound in the canvas. And then there's a boat there that has sunk in the water, and that boat signifies the sinking of the seawall, which is the Korean boat the Korean ferry that sank in 2014 with 300 guys, 300 people dead. And so that one is called The Wound, the sinking of the seawall.
So as I was looking at this and you were talking about the wound, I had thought of an Italian painter, and unfortunately I couldn't remember his name, so I had to get up, and here he is, Alberto Bourie. Have you ever heard of Alberto Bourie?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I have.
Good.
I like him very much.
Yeah, he used, for those of you who don't know, he was a prisoner. He was an Italian who was a prisoner of war, and he was a surgeon, and he took care of a lot of people in prison camps. And after the war, he made a series of paintings where he used burlap. Burlap was the material that food aid came to Italy from the United States in. So it was the burlap was collaged onto the canvas, and then there would usually be some red in it because the burlap was bandages. So they're very, very symbolic paintings of the wounds that Italy suffered and was healing from after World War II. So that's what I thought about.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I may have even gotten the idea from him. I think I saw his exhibit before this, but yeah. So some now people will give me discarded canvases.
Mm,
And you know, I can sort of it's a good exercise because it involves like thinking where things can go that can make use of the canvas that and scenery that's already there, but also put a little bit of a contemporary tilt to it.
right, right. This one looks like Happy Trees guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, definitely all of his brush marks are in this one. So
Right, right,
it was
right.
definitely an example of one of his works.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you have some other things that you have here that you've worked on. Let's take a look. You have this piece.
Yeah, that's you know that's face you know the mesh. You see a faint outline of a face. That is the mask that goes over a patient who had brain cancer, and that secures the patient to the uh, platform whereby they get radiation, so that the beam targets the area the person doesn't move, and so it's a very claustrophobic mask, but it's a very meaningful because that patient actually went through a series of treatments, and this particular person liked flowers a lot, and so it's an homage to their uh, considerably difficult fight in against brain cancer.
Hmm. Yes, it gives us ideas for an exhibition that might happen down the road.
Yeah,
It's actually
yeah, yeah.
we're planning to work with Dr. Ko on an exhibition. I don't want to give too much away yet, but she'll be part of an exhibition in 2021 at the Mocha Gallery.
Oh,
Okay,
cool.
yeah, yeah, and
So this one of my hobbies is picking up trash, you know, even the hospital parking lot and stuff like that, because you find the weirdest things. And so in Patchogue, on the shore, the Great South Bay, I was known as the trash picker. And I have collected all means of bones and feathers and glass and ceramics. And I affixed these to a skull. And so it's, you know, Damien Hirsch did a piece called For the Love of God. He encrusted actual diamonds in the skull. And I mean, this thing is worth, I don't know, millions, right? And
yes,
so you
$200 million.
know, yeah. And so
Yeah.
my piece is called For the Love of Glass.
Very good,
And
very good.
so that would be just yeah, it's real heavy, but I also, you know, I do a whole bunch of stuff with glass. I had to
Oh,
find out a
sorry.
way to repurpose what I was collecting, because it didn't, you know, some of the pieces are so beautiful that just throwing them out, I don't think did them justice. So I wanted to make art out of it.
You know, it's funny because like that piece by Damien Hirst was built as the most expensive piece of art ever, and it's like, well, you know, if you just took the raw materials that he used to make it, it would have probably cost as much as he got for the whole thing,
Right,
bejeweled with diamonds, right? You know,
right,
so
right. Yeah,
you know, he
yeah.
was trying to make this statement about himself as being great, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. I
Yeah,
like glass. I like the fact
yeah.
that you use glass.
Yeah,
That you use
I
glass.
think it looks rawer,
Yeah.
more raw than a diamond. Yeah.
Well, you could probably tell that Dr. Ko is got a good sense of humor, and every once in a while I get to see these cartoons that she does. So she's given us some of them here, and well, this is not the funny ones, but you've got some drawings of the workspace.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
was thinking they were going to be the funny ones, and they're not.
yeah. Well, you know, painting is a real poor medium for humor, and so that's actually why I went to cartooning, because I love funny things, and
Got
so
some humor here and there.
yeah.
Yeah.
But these are like they're from I'm doing a neurosurgery coloring book. And these are line drawings, are really hard. They're really, really hard. And I labor over these quite a bit because in a line drawing, a millimeter makes a huge difference. And so, because you only have one line to express the whole intent of the piece. And so I think I'm up to 12 of them now. I'd like to finish 20 and then publish a neurosurgical coloring book.
So these are 4 pages that will be in the coloring book.
Yeah.
So we can all share in the joy of neurosurgery.
all surgery.
All surgeries, yeah.
It won't be only neurosurgery. It's just in medical. It's a neurosurgery coloring book, but there's surgery, different types of people in surgery.
Okay, well, we can accept that.
Mm-hmm.
Accept that. So you've done drawing, you've done painting. I know you're interested in video. You've done some. I actually was on the front end of the camera once in one of your videos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, a very popular one, by the way.
Was it now?
Yeah.
Very good. So what do you try to do with your video work?
The video is combining them. It's a message. The videos have layers and layers of meaning. And it starts off, it seems very kind of simplistic, but there's usually, if you listen to the music, there's usually an underlying message there. And the music changes a lot. Like sometimes the person, his name is Simon Downs, and I work together at Med School Radio. We put like 5 or 6 or 7 songs in a 1-minute video. And so if you listen to the music, then you look at the art, then there's some other video playing, and we just do a whole bunch of different things, but mostly they're related to some aspect of medicine. They're sort of in the crossroads of music, medicine, movement, and art. So that's sort of where those videos sit.
Okay, so it's been tough the last few months. What have you been doing in the time of COVID? I've been growing a beard and working on one sculpture that I go to every day and do 2 hours, and it still looks the same after 2 months. But
oh, I know that one. I know that one. Yeah.
So how have you been spending your time? And
so I labor. I mean, I have a few pieces that are lingering that I would like to bring to a close. And when I say lingering, I'm talking about years. Because there's something wrong with the lighting, or, when a piece isn't done, especially a painting, that canvas talks to you. And so, and it's not right. So it's telling you that this is off, this is off, this is off. So sometimes I just turn it to the wall so I don't have to hear the dialogue. But there's a few of them that I would really like to, I've set some goals for this year. In art that I would like to, personal goals that I would like to bring to a close, certain canvases that have just been like a hangnail. And maybe they are a hangnail because they're terrible.
Sometimes you just don't know how to finish them, and you just have to wait until the answer comes. I had a sculpture that I thought it was like, it was about 5 years ago. It was sitting in my studio. Turns out that Facebook told me it was 8 years ago. One day it came up and it was like, that was 8 years ago. It had been sitting in my studio unfinished for 8 years. And then last year I just finally decided that I would take it out and see what happens. And it was like, it was time to finish. It was interesting. Yeah. So
it finished in good time then.
Well, it's one of the ones that's like the Georgia O piece. It's the wood pieces that are the Tory pieces, and so it was you know, I was really glad that it took me still another 3 months to finish it,
Hmm.
you know, and after 8 years and 3 months, I finally got it done.
Wow, wow.
But
So
yeah,
that
so
so when you list it, it's going to be the title, and then that instead of a year, it'll be a period of 8 years.
yeah, you know, a lot of
Yeah.
people, a lot of times you see that where they have like 2017 to 2020 on the work, and I always like to go with, well, it was finished in 2020. You
Yeah.
know, people
Yeah.
don't need to know how long it took you to make it.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you want to finish some of the works you've been working on,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I want to
and
finish some paintings. I'm doing a neurosurgical alphabet from A to Z, and they're all the same size as square. So
oh,
A is square, so it's 26 letters. It's taken years. I'm up to like G. You know,
yeah.
everything's in my head. I got it in my head. I just haven't, I haven't put it out yet. And so I would really like to finish that. I don't think I will, but I would really like to push it, at least get to L, this year.
So that's funny because I too was working on an alphabet, and I
Uh-huh.
finished Aleph, and I started Beth, and I never finished the second piece. So my alphabet is A, and that's about 10 years now
Yeah.
since I
Yeah.
did the A.
Yeah. I think I might just skip to Z. I might go from Z backwards,
Well,
So
you could
things.
be like Dr. Seuss, and you could go on beyond zebra, and you could make up new alphabets.
Well, it's funny because you have to figure out something meaningful in neurosurgery that matches that alphabet and that letter. And so, yeah, it's kind of an intellectual exercise, but they're all the same size, and so it's completely square. When it finally comes to fruition, it's meant to hang all together on a wall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, that grid is like 25 by 5 with one sticking off the side, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
so is
yeah.
A axon?
No, A is astrocytoma.
Ah,
Yeah, close though,
axon
close.
is so much
Uh,
simpler.
but that's hard to paint.
Well, neurons, I actually did a whole series of neuron sculptures in the past. I don't think I've ever shown them to you.
Well, one of the letters, I mean, I kind of have the letters, the alphabet sort of picked out already, the letters, but the M is what I'm like really keen on because the M is melanocyte.
Oh,
And melanocyte is the cell in the dermal layer of the skin, which determines pigment.
oh,
And so the melanocyte, that particular cell, it gives out pigment. And so that's how you get skin color. And that melanocyte could possibly be the most important cell ever in the human body because of what it has led to, just based on the pigment level of that particular cell. So I'm really keen on that. M is going to diverge off of neurosurgery
so
into M.
is that like biological or cultural? The pigmentation cells.
Biological.
Yeah. Well, it's also very important culturally too.
Yeah, yeah. It's huge,
Yeah.
especially what's going on now. Because
Hmm.
if we had no melanocytes, we'd all be the same color.
Hmm. We'd all be albino, right? Would that be true?
Yeah,
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 yeah. We'd
yeah.
have some.
Right?
That's true. That's true. So it's all about the amount of pigmentation that comes out of the
Yeah,
melanocytes.
probably the most important underrated cell in the human body. And
Mm.
so, yeah, so I'm really keen on that. That will be in the alphabet.
Well, we're looking forward to that one.
Okay, great.
We definitely are.
Yeah, I think I'll probably be, retired by the time I finish that.
It's a project for a lifetime.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to share with everybody that every time I went to look at the chat, my screen went black. So there were questions posed on there, and I didn't feel comfortable about looking at it because we lost the pictures that we were looking at. So um, is there anybody else out there who can read them? Can you read them, Dr. Ko?
Yeah, it says, oh, okay, so, oh, there's like one question.
Well,
Okay,
the rest of you can ask your questions now.
yeah.
Yeah. Anybody have anything they want to ask Dr. Ko?
We had one question from Facebook that asked how many languages you speak, Dr. Ko.
Oh, let's see. Does cat count?
Of course it does.
You heard me, Beth, you heard me speak cat.
And you're obviously fluent.
Yeah, yeah. So is there a native language in Hawaii that is still in practice?
There's Hawaiian, and then there's a kind of a Creole blend, and then yeah, that's pretty much it in Hawaii. So there's a Creole blend in English. So there's three of them. But the Creole blend, it's called Pidgin. It's very close to English. It's kind of like what they speak in a similar vehicle, like when they speak in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
It's that a little bit of all. And Pidgin takes a lot of words from some of the Asian languages, some from the Hawaiian. It's an amalgam of different words.
Do you ever feel like you'd like to go back and live in Hawaii?
You know, the thing about Hawaii is the light. You know, the lighting, you don't need a lamp to draw because it's 22 degrees above the equator. And that sunlight, you can, that's one really good advantage. You don't need artificial studio lighting. That's a real different thing than in Hawaii. In New York, you need studio lighting for me to paint, to draw. But in Hawaii, you don't need it. Yeah, that's one really amazing thing.
And the seasonal shift is not nearly as much, is it? Then, being so close to the equator.
Zero, almost zero. But there's a little bit, but it's really nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You can almost by the light, if you imagine you were on a different part of the planet, you can see what part of the spherical object you're on by the way the light hits it and the way it changes over time.
Yeah. Well, that's what drawing and painting is about. It's about the way light hits an object. And if you can, that's one thing that I couldn't learn without going to school. I couldn't learn that at the Y, the 92nd Street Y, where I took a few painting classes. I couldn't learn it on my own. I had to go to school. And once you can understand how light hits an object and envelopes the object, that's the basis for creating drawing and painting that looks sort of real.
Well, it's a multiple variable situation. You have a surface and you have a light situation, and you're working with both of them. So.
Oh, so somebody said something about how do you decide what medium to do a painting? I don't know how I decide. It just pops in my head. I just I like to, I think if I had started art early, when I say early, like in my 20s, I might not have been as flexible as I am now, because I started art so late that I haven't had the opportunity to really hone in on something. And so I'm sort of like a child in a candy store where everything looks so interesting. And so just when I start to get okay with pastels, boom, I want to do ink. As soon as a little bit of progress with ink, boom, I want to do collage.
Tigger, you like Tigger?
Yeah, so I never really, I don't, I sort of just jump around so many times that I
Right,
think
so-
if I'd started earlier, I might have honed in on something a little bit better.
Right. So,
Yeah.
having said that, yesterday you told me that if you were to start over again in art, you would have not gone into two-dimensional art, but you'd go into time art, video and film and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. If I had a do-over, I would go into video. Because I love, like, just like you, I love music so much, and sound, that I just feel like, I need to put that to my art. And, I could spend if you want to procrastinate, and which is one reason why I have all those canvases that are not done, you could spend like the half the day deciding what music you need to paint with. And so
Yeah.
by the time you decide what music, you put a few strokes on it and the day's over.
Yeah, some of us don't have that problem. Some of us decide quickly what we want to listen to. Yeah.
I have a question, Dr. Ko. Can you tell us a little bit about what your studio practice looks like? Because I can't even imagine. You get so much artwork done, but obviously you're very busy.
Let's see. Okay, you mean what the physical space looks like?
Well, physical space, but also time-wise. Like,
It's yeah.
everything?
I do a lot. It's funny because time is one of those elements that I'm like obsessed with, and that's why I did there's a brain here, a clock brain.
Do I have it?
Yeah, you have it.
Now let me look it up.
But I also I love it's there. I sent it because I love I don't know, I'm obsessed with time, and so yeah, there it is. And so I think I've done like 13 of these, but they're all different. But there's something about time that it's probably and I wrote this a long time ago, but time is the only currency, one of the only currencies. It's a finite entity, and so I'm really like, time, if there's anything that's more important than time for me, I don't know what it is. And so I just I don't sleep that much, and so I got lucky there, and I just sort of I guess I'm able to somehow just go into a zone, and I think I made this clock in about 20 minutes.
Sometimes it's quick.
Sometimes it's quick. And sometimes it's decade. Yeah, right.
Right. Time is, time is interesting because it's so variable at the same time. Sometimes, and I keep on using the word, you can't get away from it, but often it's quick and races by, and other times you're just like, stuck in a moment that lasts forever.
Yeah. There's a piece right below that clock.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Yeah, that actually is, I think for me, that's probably my best piece. One of my best pieces, because it means so much. That's surgical gauze, and that some of the surgical gauze is taken directly from the patients that I've operated on over 30 years. And some of it has some blood on it. And I do impressions with these surgical gauze. If you look to the left upper corner, you can kind of see two little circles, and that's a needle holder. I did an impression of the needle holder with the gauze, and then I hang my coat on the side of it, and so that whole piece includes the coat. But when it's lit really well from the top, the surgical gauze ripples in a specific way, and this is one of my favorite pieces because it means so much to me. It brings back all the years and years and all the thousands of patients and surgeries that I've done.
So this is another self-portrait there.
Pretty much, yeah, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We started with the self-portrait that was in a much more traditional manner, and we seem to be coming to a close in a whole different way of working in art. You know, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, painting is, you know, you know, there's a set way you have to work. You have to put the color on the canvas, but this is something very different. And I did see that in a lot of your work, where there is a collaging thing going on that that is very different than a painting sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
Well, we're coming to a close on our time here today. It's been a lot of fun talking to you.
Likewise.
And yes, and you know, it's actually been a long time since I've spoken to you. It's been,
Mm-hmm.
I think we haven't spoken since last year. So I'm really happy to have spent some time with you now, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy that everybody came and joined us today.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for being out there. And um, next week, we'll be talking about the history of women in art, apropos to having Dr. Ko here. And I'll be working, you know, those are usually my lectures, and I will be sharing that one. I'm happy to be sharing, and with Eileen Winterpalmer, and it'll be a 2-part series. So that'll be on July 13th and 27th. And our curator talk on the 20th is a really exciting artist whose work is currently just been hung in the Pat Med Library, and Jane Hartley's work. So if you get a chance to get to the library, you can see it, and we'll also be posting that work on some of our multiple platforms here. And we'll be looking to see Dr. Ko again sometime real soon, maybe in the gallery if we all get to go out again.
That would be great.
Yes, okay. So thank you all for being here.
Oh, thank you.
Kathryn, thank you, Dasik Makchana, for being off in the space somewhere and helping us all out. Have a great night, everybody.
Okay.